Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some absolutely fascinating teachings from Chapter 7, What Are Demons? And I'll tell you right now, this text is a total game changer for how we look at spiritual obstacles. I mean, have you ever felt this massive, almost unexplainable pushback right when you were on the verge of a huge breakthrough? Well, as we'll see, there's a very specific reason for that. We're looking at a framework here that completely challenges modern assumptions and takes us deep into the hidden mechanics of spiritual growth.
So it brings up this really provocative question. Why do the greatest spiritual obstacles appear right before enlightenment? According to the source material, the most intense attacks literally happen just as you're about to cross the finish line. The text points to the historical account of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, meditating under the Bodhi tree. It wasn't during his early beginner years that he faced the ultimate obstruction. It was right before his final realization. Why then, right? Why does the resistance absolutely peak just before the breakthrough? Keep this in the back of your mind, because the answer is going to completely change how you interpret your own moments of intense struggle.
The foundational text we're exploring today is the Silent Buddha, which dives into the profound, often unspoken realities of spiritual practice. And specifically, we're zooming right in on the chapter that confronts the concept of Mara. These are the forces that actively attempt to derail your progress.
To map out our explainer, we've got a quick 4-part agenda. First, the reality of demons. Second, exploiting the ego. Third, weapons of defense. And finally, the philosophy of emptiness.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the reality of demons beyond mere metaphors.
Stepping away from those clinical definitions of the mind we're so used to, there is a stark dissonance here. We're entering a much broader, multidimensional view of reality. You know, today, it's super common to just reduce all our internal struggles to psychological metaphors. We call them our shadows, our neuroses, or honestly, just stress. But the source text makes a huge pivot. It asserts that these demons, or Mara, are actual external spiritual entities. Yeah, you heard that right. They aren't just a bad mood or some internal delusion. They're active, conscious forces that deliberately seek out practitioners to tempt, confuse, and completely obstruct them. The text uses this highly grounded, honestly kind of visceral analogy, comparing these entities to cockroaches that desperately try to stop the light simply because they can only operate in the shadows. It's like this. Think about a person on the verge of enlightenment, or even just a major positive shift in their life as a rising sun. Right before that sun fully breaches the horizon, the creatures of the dark absolutely panic. They know that once you reach that state of bright, enlightened awareness, their influence is obliterated. So they become incredibly active and aggressive right before the dawn, desperately trying to keep you in the dark.
Moving on to Section 2, exploiting the ego, the mechanism of demonic attack.
So the crucial point here is understanding exactly how these entities actually gain access to us. They don't just randomly strike out of nowhere. They need a foothold, a point of entry. These spiritual entities feed on negative thoughts, like gasoline, and they specifically exploit our deeply relatable human vulnerabilities. We're talking about the desire for honor, vanity, and that burning urge for self-display. The text is super clear about this. You actually draw these forces in through imbalances, like unresolved anger or constant dissatisfaction. Basically, these vulnerabilities act like a homing beacon. You've got the demons of your own mind, your own internal greed or frustration. And these internal issues literally light the lantern that signals the external spiritual demons, drawing them right to you. They use your desire for worldly recognition as their fuel.
And honestly, here is where their strategy becomes truly terrifying. They don't just attack you with fear. They use seductive flattery. They whisper into the crevices of a proud ego to pull you entirely off the path. If they know you desperately want to be spiritually great, they'll pose as beings of light. They'll whisper things like, "You are a great Buddha. You have a great mission." And here's the catch. If a practitioner has even the slightest crack of vanity or self-conceit, they'll swallow this flattery whole. They'll start believing they're having some divine revelation when in reality, they've just invited Mara right through the front door.
So what do we do about it? Section 3, Weapons of Defense, Practical Tools for Spiritual Combat. Knowing this reality, we have to look at our decisive weapons of defense. And no, we aren't talking about physical swords here, but profound shifts in perspective. How do we actually close the door on these forces? Well, the author provides a highly practical checklist, emphasizing that keeping a grounded view of yourself leaves zero room for demonic flattery to take root. Number 1, thorough, unwavering humility. This is your baseline armor. And number 2, which I find brilliantly pragmatic, objective verification of your actual achievements.
If an ego-driven thought tells you that you're a grand enlightened master, you have to immediately look at your actual track record. What have you practically accomplished? How many people have you truly helped? Grounding yourself in cold, hard reality completely shatters the illusion of vanity. In fact, the text gives us a specific metric. It says we should purposefully evaluate our own achievements at only about 70 to 80% of their actual value, maintaining a buffer of deep humility. I think this is such a fascinating, actionable piece of advice. By deliberately undervaluing your greatness just a little bit, you eliminate the gap where arrogance grows. You're intentionally keeping your ego slightly deflated. Because think about it, if you believe you're operating at 100%, you're ripe for a fall. Keeping your self-assessment at 80% means there is absolutely zero room for the demon of pride to latch on.
Which brings us to Section 4, the philosophy of emptiness, the ultimate spiritual shield. This is the ultimate overarching solution proposed in the text. If humility and objective verification are your tactical weapons, the philosophy of emptiness is your impenetrable fortress. By recognizing that all things are temporary, we literally stop building the ego structures that these external demons use as footholds. Emptiness, or ku in Buddhist philosophy, doesn't mean nothingness. It's not nihilism. It means understanding that worldly honors, fame, and even our own rigid sense of self are fluid and ultimately fleeting. When you consciously return your worldly attachments and desires to zero, you dismantle the psychological scaffolding that demons climb. Without your vanity or greed to feed on, their attacks simply have no target. You're removing the very bait that attracts them in the first place.
I absolutely love this imagery because it turns a kind of terrifying concept into this wildly empowering realization. The text says, a mind practicing emptiness is like a polished block of gold, leaving no cracks or crevices for demons to hook their claws into. Imagine that for a second. A demon literally trying to scratch at a perfectly smooth, shining block of gold. There's no texture, no rough edge of anger, no tiny crack of vanity for them to grab onto. Your mind becomes so fundamentally sound, so totally devoid of sticky attachments, that their attacks just slide right off. But of course, to maintain that beautifully polished state, the text makes it clear you have to pair this philosophy with an unshakable faith and a commitment to continuous, diligent effort every single day. This isn't just a one-and-done fix. It's the active, daily process of crushing your own internal seeds of illusion. You have to actively dissolve your worldly calculations of loss and gain and relentlessly focus on self-improvement. Faith and diligent effort, those are the twin engines that keep the mind perfectly polished. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to really challenge how you view your own internal hurdles from here on out. Ask yourself, what demons might currently be feeding on the hidden vulnerabilities of your ego? Are there moments right now where a sudden surge of pride or maybe a deep sense of unearned grievance is actually serving as an open door? By applying thorough humility, objectively verifying our reality, and practicing the profound philosophy of emptiness, we can slam those doors shut for good and step fully into the light of our true potential. Keep polishing that block of gold,